Hello, everybody. This is Frank with Iron Age News, South Florida Conservative News Center, Sunday, March 22nd, 9:39 a.m. Hope you're all having a good weekend so far. And this one, we're back in country with the other enemy, being, of course, the anti-Trump administration, democratic socialists, and all that type of thing, who are holding up the payment of the Transportation Security Administration officers based on the fact that they will hold as much of America hostage to stop the SAVE Act so that they can then, of course, register illegals to vote, which they do. Let's not kid ourselves, and such on, such on. So the point of this is when people say, why can't this be done or what can't that be done? The TSA and all these other organizations, ICE and all, fall under what's called the Department of Homeland Security. Homeland was put together back during the terrorist heyday, and it lumped a bunch of different organizations together. And there's been a lot of problems with it. And we're going to talk about that issue and what can be done so that all these other government workers don't have a situation where they're being used as a political football. And so that's how we're going to do this. So, how we got to this point. The TSA is working without pay, and the entire organization is being influenced by the whims of the Democratic Party, and it is not an accident. It is the result of a system that was built to never stop. And I'll explain that, but was never built to always sustain the people inside of it. After 9/11, the United States made a conscious decision that security would be continuous. I know it's been a big problem. Airports would never go dark again. Screening would never pause. The system would hold no matter what. And to enforce that, the government created what is now the Transportation Security Administration, nested inside, I said, the much broader Department of Homeland Security. So from day one, TSA was not optional. It was not flexible. It was a fixed point in the system. The planes keep moving, the people keep moving, TSA stays. But here is the problem with that. The system that guarantees TSA will show up to work does not guarantee that TSA will be paid when they do. That contradiction sits inside what's called the Anti-Deficiency Act, a statute that prevents federal agencies from spending money that Congress has not formally approved. So when funding stalls, whether it's through political warfare as it is today, delay or procedural maneuver, TSA officers are classified as essential, which means they are required to work, but not required to be paid in real time. So you can see how that would suck. Air traffic controllers, you remember that, same thing. So as you think about that, the United States has built a system where the continuity of security is mandatory, but the continuity of compensating the people and entrusted to do the security is not. Sounds like the government, right? Now, this isn't just about the TSA. This is about how the entire Department of Homeland Security, and this goes back before Christine Nome, before everybody starts. This is back at the design phase, which a lot of us did not want this ever to come together. This brought you the FISA courts. This got you all this other internal intelligence gathering that did nothing to stop terrorism, but did help suppress a lot of American citizens. But as I said, this is about how the entire Department of Homeland Security is structured. One last thing. Anybody that calls anything Patriot, Homeland, blah, anything like that, it's usually the most draconian shit going down. Always. Inside the DHS, you have multiple components. You have the TSA, which secures the aviation. You have everybody's favorite U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, handling enforcement and detention with the illegals and everything else, people smuggling parrots into the country. FEMA, you also know FEMA, and the border protection people. And that's intelligence and more on that. On paper, this looks like strength. You have layered capabilities, unified command, and redundancy. But in practice, It reveals something else, okay? A system that is operationally unified but financially fragmented. They pushed all these guys together under a non, they didn't develop all these units. These units were out there mostly. They shoved them all under one roof and then put Homeland Security over top of it. So what we're seeing here is a system that is operationally unified and financially fragmented because they all have different income streams. Each component depends on its own stream of congressional funding. And when the funding is interrupted, there is no internal mechanism to stabilize the workforce across the system. You can move people, you can shift priorities, but you cannot move money. And that is what Congress is aware of, and that is what Congress is using to bludgeon the Trump administration into backing off the ICE, which is already financed by victimizing everybody at TSA, which is not. And honestly, much more irresponsible because if a terrorist were to decide to get on a plane and crash it today, they would blame Trump, but it's actually Congress. And they'll say, well, Congress, everything's run by the Republicans. You know better than that. Half those guys aren't. It's ideologies. We're in the world of ideologies. We're not in the world of political parties. So this is where the vulnerability is going to be because TSA is not like the other agencies. It cannot scale itself down. It cannot pause. It cannot quietly absorb disruption. It operates in public, like I said, in real time. It's every major airport. They have to have the screeners, even if there's two of them, they have to have them. That gives you the long lines. People are just saying, I'm sicking out if they have sick time or vacation time. So when TSA is forced to work without pay, what you're seeing is not just a labor issue. You are seeing a stress fracture in the domestic security architecture of the United States. And whether it was designed that way or not, it's there and it's going to require a lot of work to address that. So here's the part that should concern you as citizens in the United States. This is a pressure point that doesn't require an attack. The terrorists don't have to missile or bomb or sabotage. They just have to make sure that somebody is unhappy with situations out there and continue to delay the funding. So by delaying the funding, you're delaying a resolution, you're delaying a political agreement, whatever it is. These people are not being paid, which means they are not giving their best at work every day. Because over time, that pressure is going to accumulate. Who's paying their mortgage payments? Who's paying their electric bills? Who's making the car payments? Right? There has been nothing put into, well, let's get ahead of stuff. So most people with experience are going to leave if possible, because if it continues to go on, you're not going to have a choice, right? And the system still functioning on the surface begins to degrade underneath, which leaves plenty of spots for our terrorist buddies to do whatever they want. And this is where the conversation needs to change because it's not about whether DHS has too many bureaus, which it does. It's not about whether TSA should exist, which is quite at this point, yeah, you're going to need them, but they don't need to be a forever branch. It's about a fundamental mismatch. We have built a security system that must operate continuously on top of a funding system that operates intermittently and can be taken down by whatever rival faction in government gets enough votes to stop it from happening. If you were to say, once again, I am holding up the TSA money because of ICE, well, that's just criminal, isn't it? I'm going to allow planes to possibly be hijacked and smashed into buildings because I need illegal people to vote. It's basically what you're saying, right? Whatever anybody tells you about Trump or this or that, the other thing, that's what's going on. Look it up yourselves, resources, look it up yourself. If the United States is serious about maintaining domestic security, which it is going to have to do for at least the next 10 to 15 years at a high level now, high professional level now, then the model has to evolve. At a minimum, critical roles like the TSA screening must have automatic pre-authorized funding continuity, not promises of back pay, not political assurances, actual real-time financial stability. because a system that depends on its workforce showing up no matter what has an obligation to ensure those people are not carrying the burden of that stability alone. Because if something happens, everyone's going to hate TSA agents more than they hate them now, right? And somehow it'll all be their fault instead of on the congressmen and the senators who will not fund them. That's the thing. People have to make the right people accountable. It's easy to deal with the TSA screener because he's an asshole and makes you take your shoes off, right? I'm there with you. That's why I got the TSA pre-clear. That's why I got the company clear itself. Maybe it's not in every airport, but I'll tell you what, it's the shit for whatever I'm paying for it. The system we built after 9/11 was designed to withstand certain external shocks, but the enemy is within, which we were not obviously we were not at least pretending that we didn't know was happening. But what we're seeing now is something entirely different. And that, as I said, is an internal vulnerability, the attack from within, one that doesn't break the system overnight, but slowly wears it down. And unless that gap is closed, continuity without compensation will remain one of the most overlooked risks in American domestic security. And that is a real thing. And as I said, to do any real retro or renovation or whatever you want to call it, refurbishment of what this whole thing was supposed to be would require the will of Congress and the Senate to work on it. It will not happen. But you could work on some things that may be able to um, go in on this, which we can discuss later if anyone has an interest. There is a way that we could guarantee some of this pay, but only in these kind of situations. And more than willing to cover that. If we get a couple of emails or DMs or whatever, then we'll cover that issue. But this is the problem as of today. So do not blame the TSA agents for anything. Blame the Congress and the Senate for not passing the SAVE Act, because the SAVE Act is what is stopping the TSA payments, not because of the act, not that the act has anything to do with it, but the Democrats and socialists and the neocons in the Congress and Senate have associated the two together, so they will not vote for the SAVE Act. They would rather leverage this thing. And I'll tell you what, they in general do not care if a plane crashes anywhere. I don't normally say that stuff, but if you see the operational issues here, they do not mind a riot in an airport. They do not mind somebody's going to get beaten down in the airport or hurt or murdered accidentally by crazy people, because the airports are crazy places, or that it's costing millions, if not billions of dollars on overage for aircraft staying in the airports. What they have to look at is, I need illegals to stay in the country so that they can vote for me. That is strictly this whole thing. It was one thing when it was political party stuff, like, I don't want you to arrest my friend because he helps us out. When you are willing to endanger the lives of American citizens in exchange for staying in power by using illegals, there is something inherently wrong with you as a person and inherently wrong with you as a party. And I'd say the same thing to the neocons, because the neocons and the Republican side, including that shitbag Rand Paul, and he says he's not one, he says he's a libertarian, but no. And same with Massey. They're all in the same pool. They know who butters their bread, as they used to say in the old days. And once again, feel bad for these people. There is nothing, and this had happened too. Those of you who were in the Gulf War at the beginning, I can't remember exactly when it was. One of my relatives was a first sergeant, and he had to read off, all the paperwork. And at that point, they promised if you went to the war, because they had a lot of National Guardsmen in there, reservists and stuff like that. You went to the war, they would have something that locked it where they couldn't repossess your house for not paying the mortgage payments, because a lot of people were in the guards or reserves and they had real jobs, making $150,000 a year or something, but they were officers in whatever. And then the same with the enlisted men. There were some guys who were sergeants and stuff, and maybe they were working wherever, blue collar job someplace. The ones who were safe ish were the ones that had government jobs, police and fire and all that kind of thing. Because theoretically, they couldn't give your job away while you were gone. Ask somebody how that worked out. The same thing with the mortgages. Ask somebody how that worked out. They also were supposed to not be allowed to file for divorce against you if it hadn't started before you left. I got asked my cousin how that worked out, right? Because that shit was going on all the time. And this is something, like I said, you have a group here that should have at least had something like that in there. Same with the air traffic controllers. We are at war. We were at war when this was put together. We are at war now, different enemies. Something has to be done to handle the compensation for this or to freeze the shit like Obama did. Remember when Obama froze foreclosures? Do you remember that whole deal? It almost destroyed half the banking industry. Now, that kind of thing should have been put through, but it won't be put through because the Congress wants to fuck these people for the SAVE Act. And once again, that's all I can tell you. Same thing over and over. Like and subscribe. We are on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, Substack, and www.southfloridaconservative.com. If you have any topic you'd like us to cover, we do cover other topics. We try to only cover the current thing, like the Iran incident, because so much of it is bullshit. And even if you told the truth, nobody will want to hear it. So that's the story there. And just get back to us. Otherwise, have a great weekend, and we'll see you on the next cast. Goodbye.